The next show is in August, so during the downtime, they plan to continue the reupholstery project in the first and second balcony sections. Well, what can we expect next in Russia's war in Ukraine? Is there any end in sight? Dr. Craig Albert specializes in intelligence and security studies at Augusta University. He's our guest this morning, one-on-one with Richard Rogers.
Dr. Albert, welcome. It's great to have you in studio. But let's start with that question. Is there any end in sight here?
I don't think there's an end in sight. Russia has hundreds of thousands of troops in reserves. They plan on waging a war of attrition. That's their strategy right now. It's just to bog down the Ukrainian counteroffensive, hold them in one spot, and just keep fighting it out as best they can. And they have the troops and personnel and ammunition to do that. Ukraine doesn't want that. They want to try to, pinch through very quickly, or not very quickly, but then in the next 2 or 3 months for this counteroffensive, because if they don't, they know that Russia's going to win.
You mentioned this. Russia has a massive military. Are you surprised that Ukraine is still in this?
Absolutely. They've shown a lot of grit, a lot of resolve. I think what Russia and what most of the world forgot is that Ukraine has been fighting Russia for 10 years, 9 years when Russia invaded this last time. So along that eastern front, Ukraine has tons of experience, tons of combat experience doing that. And Russia miscalculated. They overestimated their own forces and underestimated the Ukrainian resolve, which is a lesson that's well written about in military affairs and military history. And Russia just did not take that seriously.
You may have just answered this question, but how has Ukraine managed to stay in this fight?
Lots of training by outside external actors and countries, lots of munitions being sent to them, aircraft, tanks, everything you can think of that they didn't have prior to 2014 when they still had a Soviet-based army. They now have a fully functional Western-based military. And so the equipment sent from the U.S., for instance, just in the past 2 weeks has been able to withstand the Russian armor capability without Ukrainians dying. So Russia's been firing artillery at Leopard tanks, for instance. They are able to absorb that, not kill the occupants. They need to be fixed, but they can tow them out and re-equip them, send them back to the front. And that's something they didn't have the capability of 10 years ago.
There's a lot of buzz about counteroffensive. You just mentioned that. Is Ukraine capable of doing that, actually striking back against Russia?
So they're making progress. They have not met the main defensive element yet of Russia. So Russia, for 6 months now, has known that the main counteroffensive was going to happen.
It's like the worst kept secret of the world.
It's the worst kept secret.
We're going to attack. I mean, is that good strategy?
There's no way to withhold that. Like, it's going to happen. In this age of media, social media environment, you're going to see movement. You know that it's going to happen. But what Russia's been able to do is to build 3 or 4 lines of defense. I mean, World War II style of defense is old school. They have trenches that tanks will fall into if not tactically arranged properly. They have big tank blockers that prevent tanks from moving in. So what they're going to do is have a traffic jam and try to exploit that if the Ukrainians come en masse and send artillery their way to blow up those. So it's really hard for Ukraine to pop through the defensive. They've done well so far. They've done okay, I should say. They've gotten to the first line of defense, but they haven't made serious contact versus the Russian main armaments. They haven't been moved in. And Ukraine hasn't moved in its main force. So there are more probing operations, a few large battles, but they're really trying to see where's the best way to zigzag through these 4 lines of defense that Russia created. We're talking about hundreds of miles of minefields with tank blockers, with munitions embedded everywhere, IEDs, snipers on the Russian side. They are very well defended right now.
So Ukraine really is picking its battles as they go through this. Now, that's old school warfare. Let's talk about new technology. Have cyber attacks played a role in this war?
Oh, absolutely. And that's something most underreported right now. Russia's been really engaging in cyber attacks on Ukraine. And Ukraine, along with its NATO allies, including the United States, has been both defending and attacking Russia facilities as well. In the cyber domain. It's underreported, but Russia has really tried some very serious, what we call physical cyber attacks, where they're trying to really downgrade or destroy physical infrastructure inside Ukraine. So trying to put electrical grids on fire, for instance, trying to blow up different gas pipelines. doing it all cyber is what they're trying to do. Ukraine has been able to block most of those. And then vice versa, Ukraine has really done some sophisticated cyber attacks inside of Ukraine as well. I mean, inside of Russia that we'll never hear about. But some of these fires that are just randomly popping up at infrastructure sites in Russia could be a result of that. There's also drone warfare going on along with that in Russia. But both sides are engaging in what I think we can call the first real cyber battle, the first real cyber war that we've experienced.
Which leads me into this question about deep fakes. We hear about deep fakes in this country a lot. Is that a situation where Ukraine or Russia are using deep fakes?
Absolutely. Ukraine's been great at this. About a month ago, or less than that, they had a deep fake video of President Putin. It was aired on Russian state-owned TV, so they got inside. So they bought it. They got it, and it was of Putin saying that all of Russia was going to be mobilized and that they were in the fight of their lives. And it was Putin himself. It wasn't. It was a deep fake. But the Russian population that saw that thought that their leader was saying they were in dire danger in the entire country. Imagine if President Biden came on U.S. television and said the entire country is being mobilized.
Right.
Even if that was corrected within an hour, that hour would be sheer chaos.
That is something to be fearful of, I think, no matter where you live in the world these days.
We'll see it in the 2024 presidential elections here in the U.S.
You don't know what seeing is not believing anymore.
That's right.
Seeing is not believing. What do we know about casualties as we wrap this up? How's it been on either side for casualties?
Well, Ukraine reports that Russia has suffered about 220,000 wounded and killed in action. They don't really discriminate between wounded and dead in action, but that's just an astronomical figure, approaching 250,000 that are either wounded or dead. Ukraine, they do not report on their casualties whatsoever, but U.S. intelligence estimates about 20 to 25,000 dead Ukrainian soldiers, which is if you compare their populations, they're relative comparable to one another. So it's a stalemate in all sense of the word between the two sides.
It has taken a toll, and we are not done with it yet, are we?
It's going to be here a while.
Dr. Craig Albert, always a pleasure from Augusta University. Thanks for your time this morning.
Thank you.